Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to us, but for the first time to you. Because what is that? Technical difficulties, if it ain't that. And that's beautiful because that's transparency, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Off Book, the Actors Book Club podcast. My name is Juan Gamero. I am so honored to be able to kick it with you guys every single week. To join us, we have a variety of beautiful faces. First off, Alex, if you'd be so kind to introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Alex Avila. I am an actor based in South Florida. Originally did a lot of theater, improv, and sketch. Now moving over to film and television. Yeah.
Awesome. Gage.
Hello, my name is Gage Kalenius. I'm also similarly in the South Florida theater community. I think I'm starting to gain a little bit of upward swing in my career, but kind of struggling to, I would say, like seal the deal on a lot of things. But most importantly, I'm young, and that's pretty much my gimmick, I think, in the group.
Love it. Aniela.
Hey everybody, I'm Aniela McGinnis. I'm a full-time professional actor through the East Coast theatrically and film, television, bunch of commercials. And I know so many of these guys from improv comedy.
And Ali.
Hey, nice to meet you. My name is Allie McCauley. Similarly to Aniela, I am also based in the East Coast and a little bit in Dallas, Texas. I've done TV film most of my life, now shifting over a little bit over to voice acting, but still primarily TV film. And yeah, happy to kick it with you guys.
Yeah, she's young too, but it's not her thing.
All right.
She also happens to be young, but it's not her thing.
Yeah, it's
Not my personality.
attribute.
And I guess my thing is that I'm old. Thanks.
I'm glad you said that, Aniela, because I wanted to, but I didn't.
And I refuse to exist within time. So
I love that.
Great.
There's Alex
Welcome
being
to our book club.
omnipotent.
And now within time, let's take it into the time. So welcome you all to, this is the first episode for you all. We are right now in our 6th book though. And so what we are currently reading is William Esper teaches the Meisner technique. And this is his 2nd book. It's The Actor's Guide to Creating a Character. We're going to quickly summarize the first 2 chapters. So if you are following along with us and you've got to do this for class, we're going to give you these cliff notes, these off-book notes as quickly as possible. And then we're going to get right into the discussion. So if you just need to listen to the first part so you can get back to class, here you go. Gage, the young
That's
one.
right. The young one.
The young one.
All right. Okay, so chapter 1 is called Welcome Back and Back to Work. And it's essentially a summation of what happens in the first chapter. But I think the first book. But Bill introduces a new character named Ray, who supposedly took classes in under another teacher there.
allegedly.
Allegedly. If you're not familiar with the books, then a lot of acting books follow this structure where they're following an imaginary classroom full of imaginary students that are sort of representing the archetypes of struggle, like each people's struggle. So you've got this new character named Ray, and the book makes it a point to mention that after their first year, they all seem to be more open and happier just in everyday life. More open to being themselves. I think the true value in this chapter, and again, not to judge what you find valuable, but Esper does put things in italics whenever he says things should be received as important. And I'm going to sneeze, so hold on, let me hit the cough button.
Preemptive bless you, because I exist outside of time.
That made me not sneeze. I refuse to do it now. Okay, so Bill, he takes like a very serious tone in this first chapter. It's more serious than the ones before, and he says that they're going to move into character work now, and that this is where, you know, you take yourself from being you under the imaginary circumstances of the first book, but pushing it into like the physical and character work, obviously. But he also says that there's a lot of traps and pitfalls that the actor can fall in here, so that approaching this section needs like the utmost care and carefulness. That's not a word.
Careful.
He also talks about Meisner assigning him a project where he has to like review a lot of famous people in theater, and he stresses that it's incredibly important to understand the history of theater, or just acting in general, not just from an actor's perspective, but people who did the stage designing and the lights and the set. And then he says one bit in there that I know stuck with us, which is that he says that he can't possibly understand people who do not want to absorb every single piece of information they can about the thing they love. Then there's the italics, which is he asked the class to recall anything that they can remember from the year before. So Melissa says your attention should always be on your partner, right? So don't do anything unless someone else makes you do it. It's quoted that he writes that down a lot. We've got, let's see, I'm trying to get exactly what was written in italics. Does anybody have that written down?
Yeah, I have the things learned from the previous year. First is the reality of doing. Acting is really an improvisation, so you learn the lines rote and then let the moment be in each rehearsal of it and performance, and then place your attention on your partner or activity, and then don't do anything unless someone or something makes you do it. And everything has to be personal, so using your imagination, your own fantasies, your own fears, to drive the inner life of a performance. And I'm sure we'll get into more specifics about what all of that means throughout. Being specific and never be general. So things that are specific have meaning, while things that are general don't. Be open and ready to be affected by your partner. In other words, be vulnerable, and then leave your objective alone.
And we'll definitely get into the discussion of that because all that is so valuable. But that is what the students say to Bill when he is recalling, asking them to recall what they did last year. Then he introduces his next thing, which leads into the next chapter. The next chapter is titled Gimps, Limps, and Lisps, Physical Impediments. And then in the end parts of chapter 1, he talks about the introduction of the physical impediment and what it is, and basically sets these strict guidelines for the performers. He says that if you're going to do anything, it should be done with a professional level of quality, meaning specificity. If you hurt your leg, how did it happen? Where did it happen? If you've gone blind, same thing. Were you born blind? Were you pushed to blindness through an accident? Where did it happen? Do you know how to read Braille? All of these things that are supposed to, I suppose, influence your inner life. Then he says a kind of an interesting point, which I will mention. He says that accents could be considered a physical impediment, so long as you're going to come in and do them with a professional level of quality, which I think scares most of the people in his class, because I don't think any of them actually do an accent. After hearing that they need to do it at a professional level of quality, I think, not knowing what that means, none of them do it. So then we move into chapter 2. And then we have the first character. Now they're just doing their activities. So this is also a very common thing that they do, in at least in Esper's books, is you'll read an account, a firsthand account of what happens in the class. So you have the new student, Ray, who sits down and he's doing a complex activity where he is truly losing his mind. He is going completely like feral, angry. I think that he even compares him to like a gorilla at some point because he's smashing his hands so hard on the table. And then you kind of learn that Ray is this firecracker personality here. But when Bill stops the exercise, and let me check really quick who he's doing it with. Quid. He's doing it with Quid. And they have an interesting improvisation, but it has nothing to do really with the exercise. Bill stops them and asks what do you have? What is affecting you? Or as he kindly puts it, what's wrong with you? And then Ray says, I have shin splints. To which Bill responds, no, you do not, because he was not playing that he had shin splints. He was so upset and so angry about this idea he came up with where he was doing something for a protest that he completely lost it. And then I think this is one of the another italicized moment that Bill says, and a conclusion he comes to at the classroom is, after this moment, somebody raises their hand and says, but Bill, what if we're wanting pain to be represented like it is in real life, and where it comes and it goes, and sometimes you feel it more and sometimes you feel it less? Well, Bill responds basically, nobody cares. Nobody cares what it does in real life. And this is another quote from him where he says that reality is never as bad or as good as you can imagine it to be. Right. So on the theatrical stage, he says, you don't want actuality. You're playing. You have shin splints. So every moment should be inflicted by that. Right. No matter what happens in real life. Right. Don't sacrifice realism for your performance of the impediment. So then they get kind of lashed, and then he's like, oh, please let me bring it back. Then they move on, and I actually wrote this down. He says, we don't go to theater to watch reality, and there's room for what's theatrical, but no room for anything that's not grounded in truth. So then they move on to another activity between Amber and Vanessa. Amber, the main thing here is that she's trying to be deaf, and she recounts that it's really, really difficult to pretend she hears things, or that she doesn't hear things, which Bill is pissed about. He says, pretend, have you learned nothing? And then he has like a meltdown, I guess. He says, what were you doing the whole year? Twiddling your thumbs in the back row. And so he basically then he kind of represents what he wants the class to do, and says there's nothing that you're pretending to do, right? You're strapping onto what you can actually do. So if you're playing somebody who's deaf, the first thing you might do is start watching someone's lips so that you can understand what they're saying. You can do all of the things that a deaf person does without actually having to inhibit your hearing. So they have this exercise. He says in italics, you have to use the reality of doing and give yourself something concrete to work on, something that's active and real. They also recount in this chapter that it's very hard to focus on those two things at once. Then Bill and Tyrone go on, and one of them's working with a lisp. Same thing here. I think this is the conclusion there. He says that sometimes it can create sort of a feedback loop when you're having a physical impediment, that the impediment can then affect your inner life. So then that brings us to the end of the chapter, where the narrator and Bill are present together in an office. They do this very frequently. And he asks them how long they'll spend on physical impediments. And he says, each set of partners will get a few rounds. I want everyone to get these rights before we move on to the next set of exercises, where the students will cause the students serious pain, which is a little bit of like a segue into it. And that is the summation of the first two chapters. That is what happens as a physical recounting.
Yay.
Nice. Good job.
Very nice.
So who wants to start this off?
So I know I can't. For the people watching at home, we've done this episode already, and then we forgot how to record it. So we were like, I think it's making me laugh a little bit.
Yeah, that's
Well,
my
I have
bad.
some points.
Yeah, thankfully
heck
we have
yeah.
Allie.
Because I missed the last one.
That's so true. That's so true. So I guess the first thing that stands out to me in these chapters is this idea that he'll mention frequently, which is that there's room for what's theatrical, but no room for anything not grounded in truth. right? We don't go to the theater to watch reality. In the first book, he says that grapes and wine are derived from the same thing, but nobody would say that they're the same thing. And he compares that to life and art. And I guess the question for me is always like, okay, how? You know, how?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Well,
Go
no,
ahead,
you
Allie, please.
no, okay. Um, well, what he similar to what you were saying, Gage, what he said in chapter 2 of Bill Esper. I highlighted it on my little Kindle. To do what I've just described, this is him talking about how to do an impediment. To do what I've just described takes a system, and that's what you play as an actor, the system, the doing. And similarly, in that same chapter, when he was talking about the shin splints that Ray did and said, like, what's more interesting, like actually doing a shin splint or like your leg is broken? Basically, like taking it to that extreme, because what's more entertaining to watch? And I thought about that. It's like, yeah, I guess as actors, we're always so afraid more in fear that we're acting too theatrical. But in actuality, that is a more interesting thing to play. Like he mentions House MD, I think, in this chapter as well, where that character, for those who don't know, goes around the entire show with a limp and a cane. And he carries that impediment with him through every single episode, through every single season. It's a little bit exhausting to watch as an actor, but on screen, natural and great. That you're like, no, he's got a limp.
Yeah, I think you have a good point. I think it's so fascinating to hear Esper talk about this, because what I'm noticing in this one, like in this book compared to the first one, and even compared to Meisner's book, is that you're having now you're starting to hear him talk about the things that we would consider to be acting topics. Like if you've gone throughout your career in acting and you've never like deep dived into Meisner or whatever, then these are the things that you would hear as like traditional acting exercises. Walk around with a limp, try this, try that, right? All the things we do in accents, the things that you'll do in a level 1 improv class. But of course, he's taking it to the extreme. But I just think it's so, like, I can see why there are so many pitfalls in this particular side of the work, because the whole entire first book is all about, like, being yourself. How do you open up to be yourself, to be yourself, to be yourself? And then this whole entire book is about how do you you're still always going to be you, but how do you change yourself?
Yeah.
How do you change yourself? How do you change yourself to make it more theatrical and grounded in reality? And you know what I'm pulled back to is a quote from Stanislavski, where he just says, everything has to be motivated from the inside, right? So the answer to, is something being too theatrical, is the way to answer it, I suppose, is, why are you doing it? Are you doing it to solve a problem for you or in your world, or are you doing it to show the show? If you're doing it to show, then you're doing it, and it's too theatrical, I guess, is my understanding at this moment. Aniela?
I think the thing that keeps coming up as well is the being specific. So much so that, we hear that in the first book, we hear that in Stanislavski, be specific, be specific, be specific. And then a lot of times when we end up adding on a impediment, it becomes general AF.
Again.
Like, yeah, I have a limp. And it's like, no. What is the limp? What happened? How does this hurt? Where does it hurt? Like, and just having those specific moments. But then on top of that, one of these pitfalls, so that pitfall is being general, first off. Second is you get so obsessed with like how great you're doing with your impediment that you completely stop interacting with the other person that you're in a scene with. Like, that's the problem, is that you become blinded to masturbating on your own impediment. You're like, God, I'm so good. I'm doing such a great job. And the reality is, even if you have an impediment, even whatever you're doing, it's still connecting with your partner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to share a little related story about that. That actually Alex and Aniela were present for, is a where we're doing a Meisner class in a guy's apartment in Miami,
As one does.
as one does. And I won't get into the details of it because those aren't important. But we're doing an exercise, and it's probably it really opened me up emotionally, right? We were doing a Doran activity like he'll do many times in these classes, but we had a relationship, a secret, or whatever the guy was calling it. I probably say his name, right? He won't mind. Maybe.
No, I think
Will he mind?
we could just say Christian.
Yeah, Christian. Okay, Christian was a guy that feels more respectful. I don't know if he's gonna be like, "Ooh, I don't know."
We're not giving last names.
That's true. So Christian is teaching this class, and he calls it an advanced Doran activity. And he's saying that, you know, you'll have your relationship, you'll have a thing that somebody like that had just happened between you guys. So the person inside's doing an activity. The person coming to the door has like a secret. Well, both people have a secret, whatever. My secret was that I had cancer. Okay. And for whatever reason, this was one of the best activities I did. And I think, and I came in and I was like, I was hyperventilating. I was emotional. I was crying. Like everything was so real to me. And I'm sitting there and then when he calls the scene, I'm like sitting there kind of like, I mean, yeah, I just did that. You know what I'm saying? But,
I just
but then-
changed lives.
Yeah, I'd be like, everybody in here, mark this moment. And then, you know, really good. And then Christian's like, Gage, you didn't see the other person. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I didn't see the other person. I was repeating, I was doing the things. And he's like, what was she doing? I was like, she was moving boxes. He's like, how come you never said anything about that, reacted to that? And he goes, tell him your secret. And she's like, I'm moving away. And I was like, oh shit, because I never like even tried to go to the other person. And I think that's what you're saying, Ayala. That's why I wanted to share it, is like, there is a way to get so obsessed with what you're doing that you completely lose sight of what the other person is giving you.
But then even that, there was that one actor in the chapter, I forget who it was, but they said to Bill, they said they felt that the impediment was actually changing them.
It was
I forgot.
influencing how they behaved because yeah.
And they
Yeah,
were
I think that was Tyrone.
Yep.
But it also, I've seen so many teachers say, hey, do the work, do it to the best of your ability. And then once you hit that stage, let it all go. Which I really love this because, you know, you're not so caught up in it of like, why am I in this pain? And why do I have this limp? Or why do I have this stutter? Why do I have it? Why do I have it? Because once you hit that stage, it doesn't really matter why you have it unless it's caught up in the scene. It just matters between you and your scene partner, what's happening in that moment, what your relationship is.
Only the weirdest of people like explain to you all of the layers of why they're experiencing pain. Like those are soul-sucking attention seekers. Otherwise, like people don't normally just go, oh, woe is me. like oh, let me recount the ways I have reached this point. It's like, nah, man, we're all just trying to survive. So like we deal with it and we go. It's like it's just so fun.
Right. So you know what the thought I'm having is right now is to sort of answer kind of the route we're on right now about, you know, what is theatrical and what is not grounded in truth and whatever. Also, sorry, just a small thing about what Ali said. Stanislavski writes 900 pages of acting technique, and then the last sentence of all of his books is always, once you get on the stage, just screw it. He literally has 900 pages of journals and texts and stories and this mystical classroom, and then he goes, once you're on the stage though, good.
Doesn't
nature
Good luck. Now I want to hear from Juan. He's been quiet this whole
go
time.
ahead.
No, I want to. I guess I wanted to ask. There were two things. There was one thing that Gage said and one thing that Ali said when they were highlighting the book, and that stuck with me, and I kind of had questions about it. Gage's was when he kept on saying to do if you're gonna do an accent, or if you're gonna do any sort of limp or physical impediment or anything like that, that it needs to be done in a professional manner. What do you think that encapsulates?
I think it encapsulates like having a speech coach, like be able to train you through it, so that anybody watching or observing, maybe not a speech coach is
Yeah, I'm
required,
just
but
like, man, Gage is over here just spending all our money.
Yeah, you just want
Like,
all the money, bro.
be
You just
like,
that's actually so
damn.
true. I just want everyone's money.
observation is free, bro.
Yeah,
true.
YouTube, sir.
Walk
Record
outside,
your,
touch grass.
Is this a
record
safe
yourself.
space?
Practice.
I don't think this space doesn't feel space anymore.
There's never a safe space. We just want vulnerability.
That's right. Well,
Uh,
Yeah, what do you guys
it's
think,
just
Matt?
why it's just like, again, he says this. He says it. He says it. Do it so that anybody who is watching, even somebody from there, would think you were from there.
Right,
That's
but I
the
feel like
answer.
that's such a, I feel like that's so open-ended, because I don't think that anybody goes out. Like last time that we shot this episode, I made a reference to having watched Night Patrol, and how the movie's terrible, and Justin Long the entire, well, not the entire time, for the first half of the movie or so, he has a toothpick and he has this like country thing going on, and kind of very like where you come from, boy, sort of vibe or whatever. And then the second half of the movie, he just kind of ditches that altogether. But what I think is dangerous is that I'm sure when he was doing it, in his mind, he's like, I'm fucking killing this shit. Like there was no part of him that's like, I'm half-assing this. Like I'm sure in his mind, he's like, I'm a fucking cowboy. Like in case you guys don't fucking know, I am. So I like what I'm sure in his mind he was being professional, but then to the viewer, me, it wasn't. So where's the disconnect?
I actually feel like we get that in the next chapters. So that's kind of a cliffhanger of like,
Yeah.
let's
Tune in
hold
next time.
that. Tune in to the next
Right.
episode to find the answer to that, because Bill does bring it up, but I don't want to say it
Right,
Yeah.
right.
until we
Yeah,
get
yes.
to
Mhm.
chapters 3 and 4.
Yeah,
right.
Which FYI normally would not happen. We normally would not have read ahead. And
Yeah,
this would be
I'm
like
having
very
a
Right,
really
right.
hard time not spoiling things right now. I'm having such a hard- Oh
Yeah,
God.
that's the other thing,
Yeah.
is just like we kind of know, but we can't
Right,
really
right.
talk
Yeah.
about it.
Right.
But I do want to say something to go back to Stanislavski, is like our role as actors is to become as consistent as possible. And the thing is, we are always going to fail. No one is going to be 100% consistent. I do not care any name that you bring up, they falter. Nobody is perfect. Like what you see is a finished product.
Even you, Alex?
Even me, guys. Even
Believe it or
me.
not.
Believe it or not,
I don't.
even I have off moments. but we forget that stuff, and we also forget this idea of like of I don't know about for any of you, but for me, when it comes to like the adding a physical impediment, and I know that we'll get to that in the next chapter a little bit more, but like the work that he describes that you go into, it seems daunting. And it's like, oh gosh. So I have a moment where I just kind of like shut down, and I don't want to pursue it because it seems like so much. And I think with the modern day that we live, there is not the same amount of time that actors had back then. They had their own problems, their own challenges and everything. But we live in even faster pace than when Esper's book came out. And so like how do we do all of that and do it successfully. It's like you got to make that time. You have to you have to like conserve enough energy in you to then put in the work, the research, the thought power into what does that even look like? What does that feel like? And all throughout, you have to be relaxed.
Mm, yes.
Yeah,
Relax, relax,
it is
relax.
so daunting. I want to add on to it is that we're all like pursuing a movement class because for the same reason, because basically every acting technique book references a movement class or something you should be doing in it at some point or another. And we're just doing the most basic level Laban and Alexander movement technique
And Jacques Lecoq.
and with Jacques Lecoq. And I already find it impossibly difficult to do it all and keep my attention off of myself and on the people, right? And I'm sure it will be easier, but I think it's like over time because you have to get it subconscious. But I think it's just the point that you're making, which is like, oh my God, there's just so much
The
to
amount of
do.
patience that we have to have for ourselves.
Right.
It's
Right. Patience.
Yeah.
that's the other learning layer is like in a world of instant gratification, learning patience and delayed gratification, which is hard to do when you live in a world of instantaneous anything pretty much.
Right.
And
Right.
Yella?
And hold on just one sec. I'm gonna let you guys finish this conversation, but I have a point I want to bring up. So I'm gonna keep my hand up, but it has nothing to do with this.
Thank
So-
you. Shut up, Gage. Stop mansplaining this.
I hate these people so much.
Uh, so I've been acting professionally for 15 years, improv for 19, and reading these books this past year has just made me realize how truly unprepared I am and uneducated and unskilled, and how much more there is to learn. And it's humbling and terrifying simultaneously because so many times with like an impediment or anything, it's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to throw this on last minute. I don't need to do any
I
research.
know what that looks like.
I can be drunk. I can be whatever. I'm a great actor. And a bunch of that is because of improv. Improv, we literally just like, you have to throw it on stage instantly and you make it work. And it's an archetype, a caricature of that thing. And reading this of realizing the amount of specificity.
Specificity.
Thank you. Specificity. They know that's one of my challenge words. Specificity that it needs to happen with this. The amount of, as he says, rehearsal with yourself outside of coming to do the actual thing.
Class, rehearsing with your partner, and doing it on your own. It's not just it's like every moment you can.
And the realization of how much I have not been doing that. I have been relying on my God-given talent, which is lacking then, because that's where the consistency comes from, is the practice, and I'm not practicing it. And the humility that came from that, of reading these books, has been shocking.
It's also been freeing for that humility of like, no, this is a practice, this is a craft. Okay,
Mhm.
right, I do need to really like get down into it, because anybody can just do the caricature.
Yeah.
But what does it mean to remove that like funhouse mirror and show someone and affect another person using what Esper is, the system that you create, whatever that is for yourself, because for each of us that's going to be different. But it's so humbling in a way that you have a deeper appreciation of the thing you're pursuing, that before it was just like sort of like a flippant disrespect of what is actually a very, very deep and beautiful practice if you choose to accept the challenge that's there. Because most of us, I know, doing a lot of improv, doing like different impediments and stuff like that, stupid easy. Anybody can just like do a hunch and drag their
Mhm.
leg behind them, but like actually doing it, making that something that's like, oh, this person has a physical impediment that is causing this, and what does life look like for them? Way more interesting to watch. Maybe not as funny, but that's probably not the same point that you're doing it for something on stage or the screen versus doing it for a comedic effect. That's going to be something different. But it I loved that humility gained. I just wanted to talk about like an appreciation for that, cuz like man, that's like a beautiful part of life.
Well, I did want to talk about a point that Aniela brought up, which is how much work actually goes into this. And I will say I am guilty of reading the first book and being like, they couldn't figure that out in less than a year. Then actually like, looking at it and going, you're so, no, it does take that long. It does. And how much work they actually probably did put in it that we didn't see, behind the scenes in the book, because we're following along just the class in the classroom rather than how much work they actually put outside of class. There was a moment when I was in college, I was doing a scene from a play called Peter and Alice with a person I'd never talked to before. Didn't have that like, oh, we grew up in the same BFA class and we have been friends for years. I've never spoken to this person. So it felt like I had to show them my professionalism as an actor. It didn't feel like I was there for like playtime with my friend. And we met and we Zoomed every single day for 2 weeks. And I'd never done that. Our teacher had told us, hey, you're going to come in every 2 weeks to work on this scene, and whatever work you've done, and I'm not going to help you any more than that. I'm just going to give you notes. So I was determined to come in memorized and blocked and everything. And this guy was like, yeah, no, I'll do it with you. And I remember sitting on a Zoom with him one late night at like 11:30, 12 o'clock and telling him, like, I feel like this is the first real time I've actually put in enough work to feel like I'm getting something out of a scene. And he's like, no, I know what you mean. Like, absolutely. And it shows like in the beginning of this book, in the introduction, where one of Bill Esper's students talks about her experience in class with him. He had a rule where there was no excuse to miss class. And if you were coming from a funeral, you better have that person's death certificate in your hand when you walk through the door. And I remember reading that going, yeah, kind of feels like that. Like if you've got a 104-degree fever, you better come in with that doctor's note showing that you have a 104-degree fever and you have a doctor telling you do not leave your house. But that kind of feels, there are so many actors nowadays that are like, I had a dinner I had to go to, or I wanted to go see this movie and I couldn't go to class. And I feel like that's so lazy.
Listen, trying to get actors to leave their 5-mile radius other than they're in a show and they need to go rehearse, like that unwillingness to do the self-sacrifice that it takes to work with and collaborate with others to create life. If you're not willing to do that, then go get a 9 to 5 and get away from me, at least. Like, I'm not about it.
Don't want to rubbing off.
Yeah, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm gonna disregard the thing I had because this conversation we're having is more important. Yeah, I see. And it's giving
We
me the
can
light.
read, bro.
How dare you?
She's doing
I
that
just
stuff.
yeah.
In the light.
Okay, so I want to talk about a part of it that's very hard for me. Is that effort. The more effort you put into something, the more you care. And the more you care, the deeper the consequences are on the other side of it. When things happen that are outside of your control, right? Like they cast somebody else, they cast somebody closer, they cast somebody who looks better, they cast somebody, they don't even do the show anymore because it's too expensive. The show gets cut. There's a million reasons. And part of the struggle for me is relearning how to deal with that pain that comes along with putting so much effort into something you love and not getting the opportunity to return it. Because for me, if they cast a better actor, I don't give a shit. Honestly, I root for good acting. But the things that are out of your control, like the money or the not doing the show or the things that are like they're closer, that stuff is so heartbreaking to me. And so the question is, not only can you get a 9 to 5 because you can't you can't leave your 5 mile radius, right? But if you can't take those punches, if you don't want to feel that sadness and then let it motivate you to try again and again and again, because you're searching for something higher, right? We talk about this. Stanislavski talks about this. You can't be in this game for fame or for money or for whatever. You need to be here for a higher reason. That's what lets you take those punches, right? And the last thing I'll say before I pass it is I watch a lot of sports and I listen to a lot of sports podcasts, and basketball is my sport. And the thing that they say is that the superstar quality, the people that make LeBron James and the people that make Kobe Bryant's and the household names that everybody knows, is not talent, it's consistency. The superpower trait is consistency. Juan.
I know we have to start wrapping up. So I kind of just had one, I guess a quick question branching off of Ali's, like working for it, which isn't really related to what you guys were talking about as far as like the laziness down here, which I, completely agree with or whatever. But more so, do you think the like people who traditionally, don't fit into the mold of an actor, for example, and these are just two random names that come to my mind, you don't have to agree or disagree, whatever, but like for example, like a John Bernthal or like a Shia LaBeouf, I don't see them going to like a movement class or a Meisner class. Do you think, I mean, it's not luck, but obviously there's talent, but they're not, I don't see them going to like a movement or a very like in your feelings sort of class. Do you think that they had the right look at the right time and then that propelled and then they were able to capitalize on it, or what?
Yellow.
I think that they were deeply knew who they were, and that is very intoxicating in this business. And they were willing to be exactly who they were beyond what society tells them they have to be. And this industry gobbles that shit up. If you are trying to be what you think you're supposed to be, you become like everybody else. And I think when you see a Shia LaBeouf, you know exactly who the fuck he is, and he doesn't give a shit. Mm-hmm. And you go, yeah, I want to watch more of that because it's almost dangerous. It's like, what's he gonna do? So that's what I think sometimes, like, that's what that magic is.
Yeah, John Bernthal is exactly the same in all of his interviews as he is in his movies or TV shows. Exactly the same.
I was gonna say Vince Vaughn. I got to meet him at one point. I had told him that I was studying acting. He goes, I've never taken an acting class. I've never studied acting. Fantastic.
Oh my God.
Yeah, Russell Crowe said the same thing after Gladiator. Russell Crowe said the same thing. He said, I've never been in an acting class.
And he doesn't need it. They don't need it. If they can be who they are authentically and in front of a camera and not waver at all, then more power to them. Yeah. And just like you said, Danielle, that's intoxicating to see somebody just That is who they are all the time, 100%.
All right, time to sign us off.
We're at time.
Anita, did you have anything else?
No, we'll save it for the next episode, everybody.
Save it for the next.
Ooh,
Sounds good. Great
cliffhanger.
cliffhanger. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for a very first episode. Please make sure to follow us on all the social platforms. Hit us with a like, a subscribe. Keep up to date with all of our episodes, and we will see you next week. Yeah.
Homework.
Homework.
Next week, we are reading the next 2 chapters.
Yes.
So if you want to keep along with us, you're reading this with us, you're going to be reading chapter 3 and chapter 4 again of William Esper's The Actor's Guide to Creating a Character. And you can follow along with us.
They're really
All
good.
right.
Thanks,
Perfect.
teacher.
We will see you next week at Off Book, the Actors Book Club
Bye.
podcast.
Bye.